Hello, everybody, and welcome to the financial empowerment classes. My name is Leah Nelson, and I will be the one teaching these classes. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's module one. So, in this module, we have two separate sections, and this first one we'll be starting with is understanding financial abuse. So, we will go over in this section. The first little thing we'll go over is what a healthy financial relationship looks like, and then we'll continue on to what an unhealthy one looks like. So, first, a healthy financial relationship has a couple of things that we want to go over. The first one is both partners have access to all financial information. So, one partner may have kind of more manage the day to day stuff. That's pretty normal, nothing to necessarily be worried about, or that's not really a red flag. But we do want to make sure that everybody has full access to everything. So you have access to your bank account, your credit card account number information. If you have a mortgage somewhere, you can access that information whenever you want. So that's the first thing. Second is differences in values are negotiated and goals are agreed upon together. So we may value different things financially. That's totally fine and very normal, actually. But we want to be able to discuss these together and figure out kind of what's the best goal for both of us to work on, right? So, next one is decision making is equal even if one partner earns more or is the sole financial provider. So, what that means is it doesn't matter how much money either of you are making, you both have equal say in what's happening with your finances. So, um, one partner works, one partner doesn't, it doesn't matter, right? We're both talking about our finances, we're both involved in these decisions. The next one is both partners have full access to their own money. So there's no need to ask permission or to hide spending. So if you have a job, or realistically, even if you don't, right, you can, go to Starbucks or something and it's not a big deal. We don't necessarily have to talk about it, but we have full access to that money that we earn, and we don't have to ask for permission to spend it. So something that's very common is, couples will come up with a dollar amount limit where it's like, if you're trying to spend something to buy something and it costs more than $100, we need to talk about it, right? So that comes with the next one, which is large purchases and long-term decisions are made jointly. So we're talking about these, we're coming to them together. So, we decide that anything over $100 is a large purchase for us, and we talk about those things, right? So the next one is what is financial abuse? What does that even mean, right? So first and foremost, what we'll be talking about financial abuse is domestic violence. A lot of people don't really view it that way, but that is the truth. It is domestic violence. It often begins casually and progresses over time. It's obviously part of the abusive behavior that's used to gain and maintain power and control over someone. And it often traps the survivor in the relationship to where they're feeling, like they can't leave because they don't have this financial stability behind them to even, pay for an apartment or even groceries, right? And then something that we see is 99% of survivors report having experienced financial abuse. So it's incredibly common. We see it all the time. Most people, if they've been in an abusive relationship, have experienced this, right? So, what exactly does that look like? What are the tactics that are used? First is controlling how the money is spent and making all the financial decisions, withholding information. So, obviously, they're the one making the budget, they're the one making all of the decisions around everything, and they're not allowing you access to any of that, right? Next is interfering with your job or work performance. So, that could be something like constantly calling you at work or showing up at your work, even things like that. Threatening to report you for cheating on your benefits. So if you're receiving benefits from like the state, um, reporting you and saying you're using them incorrectly or something like that. Next one is stealing money from you or your family. That one's pretty straightforward. The next one, forbidding you from working or getting an education. That one is really common. They will not allow you to work. You can't further your education. Next one is forcing you to sign or file fraudulent legal documents or benefits. So, if you're trying to get benefits from the state or something like that, and they're not correct, right? Or they're lying about them and they're forcing you to sign them. That would be what that is. Preventing you from obtaining or using credit or bank cards. So this one's pretty common. They won't allow you to apply for a credit card, or you can't use your debit card from your bank, things like that. And then we have forcing you to work and or hand over any income, assets, or benefits. So that's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about before, where they will force you to have a job and that money is not yours, right? It's forcibly handed over. Excuse me. And then the last one is overusing credit cards or refusing to pay the bills. And this one we see really often, where they'll run up a lot of credit card debt on, in your name, and they won't pay it. And then it kind of, ruins your credit, things like that. Or, you find out later that, you're months behind on your rent or something like that. Okay. So, you've decided you want more financial independence. Like, where do you even start, right? It's obviously overwhelming. So we want to take it one step at a time. We start small. So you can think of ways you can start saving in small ways. So like getting an extra $10 out, cash back when you go to the grocery store, or putting money aside from any bonuses you get from work or increases in your pay, earning extra income by maybe selling some things you have around your house, or if you have a craft you could sell, or, a service you could provide, like babysitting or cleaning homes or something like that. And then the last one is opening a separate bank account. And that's something I would encourage most people to do, as soon as they can. And that way, any money that's in there is yours and it can't be touched by anybody else, right? Okay, so I do want to go over a couple things that are just the basics. We'll kind of talk about these and I'll throw out some of these words. I just want to make sure that everyone knows what they are. First is assets. So that's something that you own, like your car, your home, your electronics that you have, maybe the savings in your account or in your retirement fund. That would be an asset. And then you have liabilities. So that would be debt. So money that you owe. So if you have a car loan or mortgage, credit card debt, student loans, that would be considered a liability. The next one is a bank. That's just a financial institution. They accept deposits. So, you can keep your savings there. They channel their money into lending activities. Then we have credit unions, which are similar, but not quite the same. They're community-based financial companies. So they serve their members, and the members are the people who open the accounts there. Usually they have less fees and higher interest rates. So usually they're the way to go. That's usually what I would recommend for most people. The next thing is a check cashing store. So that's like a business that will cash your check. They charge a fee, usually about 1% to 2% of the amount that they're cashing. The next one is payday lenders and car title loans. We will go over these more in depth, and I believe it's module 3. We'll talk about it a lot more. So they provide a small cash advance or a short-term loan. They typically have a very, very high interest rate, some as high as like 400%. They're incredibly high. Those we want to avoid at all costs if we can, right? Okay, so we have our next little section, which is budgeting. So we have a little self-assessment here that I want you to think about. On a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with your personal finances? 10 being, I'm really comfortable, I feel great, I know where my money is going. 1 being, I'm feeling really stressed out about it. I don't know what's happening with my money. I really have no clue where to start. Next one is, do you budget regularly? And then if you do, what are the benefits of it? What have you liked about it? If you don't, why don't you? What are some of the barriers you're having? Just kind of think about that. Okay. So why does it matter? I'm sure you've heard about a million times that, budgeting is something you should do. And it is. And I'm going to tell you why. So the first one is it gives you an action plan. So if we have an idea of where our money is going to go before we even have it, that can be really, really helpful. Second is it keeps your eye on the prize. So if you have a certain financial goal you're trying to reach, your budget can help you do that. And it kind of keeps your perspective to that, right? The next one is it makes sure you don't spend money you don't have. So you keep better track of what you have, right? So you're not overspending continually every month. The next one is it can help you create a more stable financial situation, and that overall will decrease your stress around money, right? That's a huge benefit to budgeting. The next one is it can help you prepare for emergencies. So one big thing we'll talk about is having an emergency fund. So every month, in your budget, you'll be putting into that emergency fund. So you have something there just in case you need it, right? You need new tires on your car, or, you have to go to the emergency room and it's kind of unexpected, things like that. Okay. So now that you know all the benefits, I know you're convinced you want to try it out, but now what, right? First thing is first, we want to set small goals. They're baby steps. It's like, we have this picture here. How do we climb a mountain? We do it one step at a time, where budgeting or having, a large savings account can feel really overwhelming. So we just want to take it one step at a time, and eventually we'll be able to climb that mountain. Um, so we need to also know that there will be setbacks sometimes. That's really normal. We need to learn, that's okay. We just have to keep going. The financial stability will be worth it in the end. And then the next one is get informed. So this class can be really helpful. We go over pretty much everything that you really need to know to have a good basic understanding of personal finances. There are things like Investopedia.com. They have great resources. Nerdwallet.com is awesome as well. Dave Ramsey has some great ones, RamseySolutions.com. So there are a lot of really great places that we can go to get some good information. So we hear budgeting, great, I want to budget, but how do I do it, right? So these are the first steps we do it. So we want to begin by figuring out our wants versus our needs. So what are some examples of that? Our needs are, we have to have a place to live, right? So our need is to be able to pay rent or a mortgage. Next one, a need would be food, right? We have to have food. A want would be maybe new clothes, right? New clothes that we don't really need, but we just kind of like to freshen up our wardrobe every once in a while, right? That would be a want. Or we want to have our streaming services like Netflix or Hulu, right? That's a want. We don't have to have that. The next thing would be to determine what money is coming in versus going out every month. So that's something that's like our first month that we're going to keep track of everything that we earn and everything that we spend. So we have a really good base idea of where we're starting. The next one is figuring out our fixed versus variable expenses. So my rent's going to be the same every single month, but my gas bill is probably going to vary a little bit. Same with like my food. So there are some things that we know are going to be the exact same. Some things we have like a good idea of the range it will be in, and some are just kind of all over the place, right? And that can happen too with your income, right? If you're working in like sales or something, it can kind of be all over the place. So we want to kind of figure out where we're at with those. Okay. Our next one is second steps. So saving for an emergency fund should be one of our first priorities. So we want to pay ourselves first. And we see here that only 39% of Americans could handle a $1,000 emergency. So if you are in that 39%, you're definitely not alone, right? A lot of people are in this spot where they don't know what they would do if they had an emergency like that. So we want to make that one of our first goals and first priorities is saving. Obviously, our food, utilities, shelter, and transportation are high up there on the list as well, because those are our basic needs, right? We have to have those basic needs met. And then our last one would be debt would come after those. So working to pay off any debt, credit card debt, student loans, things like that. Okay. So the next little bit, we're going to go over a couple different methods that we can use to budget. So this is kind of a good start to get it set up, but there are a couple different methods we're going to go over. So the first one is the envelope method. This one is great if you tend to overspend in certain places. So if you eat out a lot, and you feel like you spend way too much money doing that, the envelope method can be really great. So basically what it is we divide our expenses into categories. So, groceries, eating out, our personal care, our fun money, going to the movies, things like that. We figure out how much we want to allow ourselves to spend that month. We get the cash and we put it in the envelope, right? So if we want to spend $50 on eating out. We get $50 out of the bank. We put it in that envelope. So we're using that cash throughout the month. And once the cash is out of the envelope, if we've used all of it, then it's gone, right? We can't eat out anymore. So the envelope method is really good for, like I said, places we tend to overspend. So if we, go to Target and we spend a couple $100 there every time, right? Maybe that's like, you have your little Target budget or something, or, um, your fun money. Like, I really like to go out to the movies, but, maybe I do it a little bit too much, or going out for drinks with friends or something, things like that. Um, and this can be really helpful in kind of reining that in, and it gives you a really good visual of how much you're spending. And it's interesting, they've actually done studies, is it's actually a little bit harder to spend money when it's in cash form. It actually can cause pain, basically. Um, so it's interesting that people tend to spend less if they have to use cash instead of a card. So that can be a great one. The next one is a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets can be really awesome. They're really easy to keep track of credit card and debit card and cash spending. So you can track it all right there. It looks at everything all at once. They're really great. You can just find a little template like this. You can just Google like a budget spreadsheet template. There's tons out there with, categories already in there. They can be really great. You sit down once a week, you update it, and you're good to go. And then there are a bunch of apps as well. So some of them will automatically pull in your credit or debit card purchases. Some of them you have to pay for, like a subscription. We like to avoid that if that's possible, right? But if the app is the way to go, it might be worth spending that money for it. Um, they're great because they can make things really easy and really low maintenance, which is really awesome. So a couple good ones are Every Dollar, Mint, Good Budget, Buddy, and then there's You Need a Budget, which is a personal favorite of mine. That one does require a subscription, um, but it's a really awesome tool. Okay, so I'm going to leave. This is the last slide. I'm going to leave you off with a couple of tips just for budgeting. First one, keep it simple. There doesn't have to be a category for every single thing. So if we keep the categories more general, it will help it be less overwhelming. So we don't have to have a specific category for, my personal care, right? You don't have to have that. If you just tend to pick that stuff up when you're at the grocery store, you can just lump it in with your grocery budget, right? So you don't have to have a specific category for every single thing you're spending money on. The second thing is to spend every dollar before you have it. So you're making sure that all of your money has a place to go, right? Before you even have it. So you know exactly where it's supposed to go. Next one is, remember, it's not set in stone. So your budget will change. If you continually overspend in certain areas, make a change, work around that, figure out how to make that work, right? The goal of a budget is not to make you feel restricted, it's to help you feel empowered, right? It's to help you have a really good idea of where your money's going. And it's not necessarily to make me feel like, oh, I can't spend any money, right? So it's okay to change it. I say that I've seen this a lot, where people will make a budget and then it's just not working, and then they feel like a failure because they have to change it. But that's really not the case. Sometimes it just doesn't work, right? So we need to kind of work around things and figure out a way to make it work, right? So it's totally fine to change it. The next one is, there is no normal month. We often get caught up in this idea that, well, this month was weird because my kid's friend had a birthday, so I had to spend money on their birthday present. And then I had to get an oil change, which is not something I do every month. So it's kind of weird. It kind of threw off the budget. So there will always be something that comes along and ruins your plan, your budget. So we have to plan for it, right? So we know that we need a little bit of leeway every month for things like that. We also can use our emergency fund, right? If things are what you would consider an emergency, if you need new tires for your car, you can dip into your emergency fund, and that's totally fine, right? Things like that. The last one is, be careful of emotional spending. This is something that's a lot more common than you probably think it is. People will get in their emotions and it feels good to spend money. You get that rush of those happy chemicals in your brain, and then after, you feel not so great about it. So being careful, maybe not keeping your Amazon cart full of things, right? Not keeping a cart full online shopping to where, if you're just feeling kind of yucky, you'll just go buy it for that little instance of happiness, right? So things like that, or learning what you do, right? If you tend to hop in the car and go on a Target run, um, when you're feeling not great, maybe find a different way to deal with those emotions, right? So it's really common, and it's something we just want to be a little bit more aware of, because we might be doing it, right? So that is it for this first module. There is a quiz. The link to that quiz is in the description of this video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And I am happy to kind of help you through creating your budget if you need it. I really am here to help you with really whatever you need in regards to figuring out your finances. So reach out if you need it. Otherwise, I will see you for our next module.